Hello, fellow nerds, geeks, and supporters of indie pop culture creators. Aaron Nabus here, and thanks for tuning in to the Hall 8 Show. I know your time is valuable, so thank you for your continued support as we put the spotlight on some incredible indie comic book and pop culture creators. On this episode, we welcome the co founder and president of Fanbase Press, Bryant Dillon. As reported recently on Comics Beat, Fanbase Press, after 15 years of celebrating a diverse range of creators and stories, has decided to launch their first Kickstarter campaign for the deluxe hardcover edition of Ripple Effects, a 2023 Dwayne McDuffie Award winner for diversity in comics and the winner of the 25th annual Foreword INDIES Book of the Year Award for graphic novels and comics. You can listen to my conversation with Jordan Hart, the writer and creator of Ripple Effects, which was also nominated for an Eisner Award in 2023 on episode 121 of The Hall 8 Show. But for this episode, I'm looking forward to getting to know Bryant better, learning more details about the Kickstarter campaign, and also diving deeper into Fanbase Press's journey over the past 15 years, especially on their impact on the indie comic scene. Welcome to the show, Bryant, and congratulations on Fanbase's 15-year anniversary.
Oh, thank you, Aaron. We're actually on the eve. The 15th anniversary will actually be next year, but we're building up to it with this
Oh, I
Kickstarter,
see.
and
Gotcha.
very exciting times. But before I even get into that, I just wanted to say thank you for having me on the show. As we were talking offline before starting the show, we've been seeing each other at conventions and comic book events for years, and given what we value at Fanbase Press, shows like Hall H, individuals like yourself, I really feel like are the beating heart, the circulatory system of not only fandom but of the comic book community. It's not easy to get press out there in the comic book world. It's also not always from the press end. It's not always the most forgiving environment, and just really appreciate that individuals like you are out there sharing their passion and providing platforms for indie creators.
Well, thank you so much, and likewise. I mean, every chance I get, they say sharing is caring, and
Hmm.
everything that you guys post, I try to make sure to share on all our social media platforms because I mean, sometimes I don't even have to read it. I just know that's going to be pertinent. So
Well, we appreciate it. We appreciate it. It's very much noticed all that support.
Yeah, no problem. Cool. Like all our heroes, they all have origin stories, right? So why don't we get into the origin story of Brian Dillon? What were you like as a kid? Where did you grow up?
Well, I grew up in central Pennsylvania. My parents were from central Pennsylvania. They moved to California where I was born, and then maybe around my second or third year, they moved back, and I was raised in central PA for the rest of my youth. And honestly, I was like a lot of my peers um, in the comic book industry, in the fandom communities, where I think I felt akin to characters like Luke Skywalker, in the sense that I felt like I was in a small town and there was very little to do, and I knew there was something out there more that I wanted, but I really couldn't put my finger on what exactly it was. I just had a yearning to find something else, find something more, see more than what was just in my backyard. Um, but I was someone who liked to read a lot. I was someone who was very into um, artwork. I was a illustrator myself as a young person, taking all sorts of classes and sort of fostering that talent. And I had a real passion for creatures with lots of sharp teeth. So it started off with a passion for like really young as dinosaurs and sharks and things like that. And eventually I came across the xenomorph from the Alien franchise. And that was just love at first sight. And so I became, as maybe a 10-year-old or 12-year-old, just like passionately obsessed with this very R-rated franchise. I was just super into it. There wasn't much out there that you could find beyond the movies. I think there was a tabletop role playing game at that point, but none of the action figures had come out or anything that hit in the '90s. But they became my gateway to comics and sort of into onto this career path, in the sense that in fourth or fifth grade, someone at my school just, out of their backpack, hey, look at these, Brian. I know you like Alien. And it was like three or four different Alien Dark Horse single issues. I think Alien Colonial Marines, maybe Aliens versus Predator, right at the cusp of like when they were just starting to get into that franchise with Dark Horse's releases, and my mind was blown. I mean, it was just, not only would I have taken whatever other stories you could have told me from that universe, but the fact that these were like these beautifully painted and drawn covers and these new stories, and there were multiple ones, and now they were mixing it up with Predator, and then this idea that somewhere in my small town, that I didn't know there was this like secret place, this comic book shop that had these things in it, just, it was again mind blowing. And that just led to me going to that shop, starting to go into the comic book shop on a weekly basis, starting to be exposed to all sorts of things that you would find in there, from like X-Men to Concrete and Batman, of course, all the majors, but also like things like role playing games and collectible card games, and the joy of like a dollar back issue sale and things like that. It was a time of awakening, youth awakening for me. And while I didn't immediately pursue comics as a career, I ended up finding a passion for theater and acting, and pursued that through my college years. I never lost the love for the medium and the format. And during college, when I was studying theater, I got pulled into comics again when someone passed me a trade paperback for Preacher, and I just started devouring that series, and just being, again, my mind was blown by what could be communicated on the static page, and the amount of emotion and pathos that I could feel looking at drawn pictures and written words. And eventually that just led to taking creative projects that I had initially thought of as films or things that would involve my theater background, and going into the idea of producing our own comics. And it's a longer story, but that basically snowballed into eventually becoming what Barbara and I put together for Fanbase Press.
Wow. And how did you and Barbara actually meet?
We actually met in college. It was somewhat random in the sense that we were assigned to the same dormitory floor freshman year. Barbara was not in theater; she was in doing a double major for political science and history. But she had a brother who was a few years ahead in the school, and he was a pretty, I would say, pretty reasonable name, if you will, within the theater program. He was known for being one of the top performers. He was part of a comedy troupe, and so she lived in that world. She lived in the theater world around, and was just basically around it. And we just became friends, connected. Um, honestly, I guess one of the things that really established our relationship, I think, as one that would go all the way to like marriage, so that we would realize that it was something that we wanted to maintain for the rest of our lives, was um, also hand in hand with what led to the comic book company. Because Preacher, once again, was something that I was so moved by when I read it, and I remember um, expressing some of this to Barbara, and she had this. I don't know. I find it kind of amazing. She had this interest in the idea of like, I want to be interested in what you are interested in because I love you. You're really into these comics. I have, I'm not opposed to this, but I have no experience. Let me see what they're about. And so she started taking on like essentially the same reading that I was, and we just ended up enjoying similar stories. It's not like we loved every comic that we read together, but I had this experience that I found really interesting, where someone who loved me really wanted to share a passion of mine and was really open minded and went into that. And now it's arguable that she is the the bigger comic fan. I mean, she's just an amazing force in the comic book community, and does such for indie comics. And there are times when I'm just like, I can't believe that you have exceeded me. You have gone so far and done so much that I'm just really impressed with her, and the ability for someone to be open minded like that, and just dive headfirst into a new passion.
Mhm. And how long ago did the both of you sort of kick around the idea of a comic book company until you actually made it a reality?
Um, the Fanbase Press solidified originally as Fanboy Comics in
Mhm.
2010. It was rebranded in 2015 to Fanbase Press. And originally it was three of us. It was another friend of ours from college named Sam Rhodes, who helped found Fanboy Comics. And we were just, I think, creative partners in a number of things. We had worked on other things outside comics, including theater, audio drama, stuff like that, films. Um, I think though that it was sort of an interesting evolution, because the way that I got into comics was creating comics was that we were kicking around at least me I was myself and a friend of mine were kicking around a screenplay and working on it while we were out here about vampires. Um, and he knew that I could draw, that I did it for fun, and he was like, "You should draw this as a comic, and we can use that as like a marketing tool." And I was a little skeptical of my ability to do so, but I was like, "Well, why not? I'll use what I have." And I ended up penciling at a really rushed schedule, because of we set a release date and bought a convention table. Uh, just barreled through, uh, penciling and inking this comic as quickly as possible, and making sure we could get it to the printer and get those copies back before the convention. But long story short, that whole experience, while it was difficult in many senses, it also pulled me into the comic scene at an interesting time around like 2007, 2008. Some really cool things were happening. Why the Last Man was in progress. I think Civil War was just heating up at Marvel. Um, uh, Close to that, Buffy season 8 launched at Dark Horse, which was really innovative. And it was just there was just a lot of things going on that I remember going to the comic book shop at that time and feeling like I want to be part of this creatively. And I think Barbara felt the same thing once we got um, aligned with a similar mindset. Once we figured out what stories we wanted to examine, and she saw that in many ways the comic book scene is reflective of the theater scene, in that there's a lot of passion and just focus on the creators in that sense, in some ways, because there's not a ton of money there. It's left to the creators in a lot of ways. um, we just found it as a really attractive space. We found people that we really connected with, and we just really enjoyed what we were doing with the first books that we started publishing. And I think it hasn't stopped yet, so we're still on that
Right.
train.
So where did the idea to sort of maybe focus more on marginalized creators come into play?
I think that is mostly just to do with our values. It was something I think we both come from somewhat. Well, I guess I won't say that we come from progressive backgrounds in this, but I will say that we come from a place where we have progressive beliefs or progressive values, and along with that comes the idea that certain people, certain people's stories are not being told. And I think the world has, in many ways, become aware of this in a broader sense over the last decade. You see the culture clash between the idea of what woke is,
Hmm.
is it negative, is it not? And ultimately, I guess when I think about Fanbase Press's philosophy, um, we want to we want to provide an outlet to people who have important stories to tell. We want to see that connection with readers and audiences. I guess honestly, it goes back to like what I was talking about in my own origin. I guess at one point in my life, in one point in Barbara's life, we were the individuals who didn't really see much beyond our hometown. There wasn't always someone speaking to us. We didn't always feel represented. We didn't feel like there was always a belonging, and we wanted to find that. We wanted to seek that out, and the place that we found those things when we were younger was in stories. Whether it was
Hmm.
film, TV, comics, novels, and I think that's a universal thing that's constantly going on. And if you believe in stories, if you believe in the power of stories, I think you have a right to figure out what's, or not necessarily a right, but a duty. If you have the ability to tell stories, or to share people's stories, I think you have a duty to figure out what stories are important to you and for what reason. Because I don't really believe the idea that any story, no matter how, even corporate produced stories, are useless or simply entertainment. I think storytelling is such an important thing within human culture that everything has value, because you never know how it's going to be perceived by the audience. Even if it's
Hmm.
created with cynical intent, the audience might hold it close to their heart and take something away or relate in a way that you can't sense. So for us, I think it's just this broader idea of not that we want to be performative or wear a badge and be able to say we're diverse comics. That's not the goal, and that does feel cynical. That feels like done for appearances. When in reality, what we want to do is enrich the storytelling that exists in our world. We want to put if we're going to put stories out into the world, we want to contribute stories that we feel are important, that we feel uh, tell stories that are not being told, and share characters that perhaps are not yet seen, and hopefully others, both those who want to enjoy stories and create stories, feel a similar urge, because I think that's just part of being connected as human beings through storytelling.
Yeah, I mean, ever since the beginning of, I guess, our journey as a human race, I mean, stories has played such an important part in relaying, you know, past experiences.
Exactly.
So 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 I know Fanbase Press definitely is a champion of stories, and I know you share the hashtag stories matter a lot. So
Right.
that's definitely a something that's worthy of pursuing. Um, I guess let me just take a step back and go
Hmm.
back to your comments about growing up in a small town. I mean, how did you find your way to California and specifically LA? What was the sort of transition, and how did you find your way?
Um, I that's part of that is, I think, because of my passion for acting. I just always saw myself as a film actor, and I had it in my head that to be a film actor, I had to go to Los Angeles. That's where the stories at that time that I wanted to be part of were being told.
Hmm.
Um, and I think the other part of that is simply help from my family. I mentioned that I was born in California. That was because my father, at a young age, in his early 20s, was hired or came across a job opening in California for wildland firefighting, and they uh, for anyone that doesn't know, these are firefighters. If you're not in California or a place where there are wildland fires, these are firefighters. They don't use water. They basically hike into remote areas that vehicles cannot get, and they clear brush until the point where, like, if a fire
Mm.
hits that area, it's just dirt and rock, and it'll stop. It'll burn itself out. And so it's a
Mhm.
pretty intense job, but you get paid. You get paid decent, and you get a lot of different overtimes because the amount you're getting paid doubles based on things like, have you worked already worked 8 hours, are you working on a holiday, is there hazard pay because you're physically on the site of a fire. So it's an easy way to make a good amount of money, and they also put you up. You're living in barracks and you just work intensely for, it used to be like a 5 or 6 month period, but now it's like year round due to climate change, unfortunately. But the point of that is I was able to do the same thing. My father's friend who went with him when he was young had worked his way up into the ranks, and I was able to apply and get accepted and do wildland firefighting for a year, and essentially set myself up with enough money to get established, get an apartment, move to Los Angeles, from San Bernardino, where I was stationed with the firefighters. Um, and it was just it's a an advantage I had that a lot of people didn't have. I was able to really take the time to get myself established and make a go at a creative career out here.
Mhm. Wow. So what years are we talking about?
That would have been 2005.
Ah.
Yeah, so it would have been. I was on the crew from, I would say, around June 2005 to roughly November 2005. I had opportunity to go back after that because what usually happens with a crew like that is they're on for the fire season around November. Uh, they get cut, and if everything works out, they'll get hired back again the next summer, maybe like May or so. And so a lot of the firefighters just live off of that. Just stash their money and then like live off their money between the years, and other ones go into things like, oh, they'll do logging for several months and then switch back.
Mhm.
But I was able to just afford some of the more expensive things, getting a car, getting a house, or not a house, an apartment in LA, supporting Barbara and I for a little bit while we figured out the entire situation of moving from one side of the country to the other. And it was just, very helpful with getting us started.
Wow, that's so interesting. Um, yeah, and also looking back at your, I guess, journey into comic fandom on how I guess it was the sort of the adaptations
Hmm.
that Dark Horse did for Alien that got you into comic books. Sort of mirrors my own, like back in the day, like the original Battlestar Galactica TV series.
Okay.
I watched that a lot when I was a kid, and it wasn't until I stumbled upon a 7-Eleven one day, and I looked at I had just I'd seen the spinner rack there, and it had some Battlestar Galactica comic books there, and from that point, for a good chunk of my childhood, I was hooked on comic books. So it's very
It's
interesting.
it's it's so interesting too, because I feel like, I don't know if you find this, but I'm sort of a champion of licensed comics simply because that was my gateway in, and
Hmm.
there is sort of sometimes a I don't know. There's a sense of like, these aren't real comics. They're because they're not original comic stories. They're from a spin-off from another franchise, and in a similar way that like finding comics in like in a drugstore, or a 7-Eleven or something like that is something that is of the past. Um, I would like that idea to go away, because I think that the yeah, we are two examples right here of
Hmm.
coming into the comic world simply because, oh yes, they were making a comic of something else, and maybe that was, to some degree, a cash grab, but that story pulled these individuals into this world and introduce them to this medium and open their eyes to other things.
Yeah, most definitely. Um, Speaking about comic books, I guess this would be a good segue to talk about ripple effects. I mean, the
Sure.
Kickstarter campaign right now it's just an opportunity to sign up for the launch notification.
Right.
But you know, when it comes to your very first Kickstarter campaign for Fanbase Press, I mean, how did you come to the decision to do a deluxe hardcover version of Ripple Effects for your very first Kickstarter?
Well, it goes back to some of the things that we were talking about. I mean, aside from it being ripple effects, we've just been very eager to get into the Kickstarter community. Similar to a lot of the concepts we've been talking about, because what we've found is that the Kickstarter comic community is less comic people that we're already interacting with that are on Kickstarter, but actually its own comic uh, fan community. You know, they're almost a unique community to itself. There's some crossover, but there are a number of people that just support and read comics via Kickstarter, and part of that I think is this attraction of this social media blend of what Kickstarter is. You can both buy, a book that you really love. You can support the creator and know that they're getting supported, that your money's going to them, and you also get this somewhat social media interaction where you get to have sort of an insider's view as like how the progress of the project is going. What different things they're able to do because it became this successful. So we've kind of been circling it for a little while and wanted to make an attempted entry into that community and see if it was something that would work for Fanbase Press, because it does seem like a very vibrant and exciting community. For ripple effects, the reason that we really settled on this story is this represents, I think, everything that we've been talking about in regards to stories and fan base presses. I guess outlook on storytelling and what to do with stories like superhero stories. For anyone that doesn't know, Ripple Effects is a superhero story. It's a story about a superhero with an invisible illness, and the pairing of those two aspects, the idea of a superhero origin story that touches on relevant modern day things like finding a work life balance and exploring creative endeavors and the way the world gets in the way, struggling with medical debt, all sorts of things. But then it's also a firsthand experience of what it's like to live with an invisible illness, and the idea, the juxtaposition of, well, what if your body was both your greatest strength because you are invulnerable to physical damage, but you also have this invisible illness that makes it your greatest weakness. You know, in this case, it's an acute case of type 1 diabetes that our character George has. So um, it just really feels like it's the kind of story and the kind of advancement, I think, in the superhero genre, given how much we have all been on along for the journey as superheroes have become more and more present within our world and a bigger and bigger genre. I mean, um, when I look at things like Invincible and The Boys, while I don't think Ripple Effects has that satirical edge, it's a little more heartfelt and genuine. I think we're exploring similar things about like um, what are we doing with the superhero stories of the modern age? You know, we've reached a point where um, many people have seen themselves in as superheroes, but also many have not. And what can we investigate when someone is uh, taking that next step with the superhero story? You know, so for us, this is a story that really matters. It's inspirational. It's inspired by writer Jordan Hart's own lived experience with his own incurable clotting disease, and as I'm sure people will see when they check it out, we've been able to assemble some really exciting talent from the comic industry, including names like Gail Simone or Tim Smythe or Don Gilio, Leanna Kangas, Ray Anthony Height, all to be part of this new hardcover deluxe edition of the book. And there's a bunch of bells and whistles that I would love to tell people about, but
Mhm.
ultimately that is I think that is the reason that we chose this one. It's not only something that is really connected with readers over the last year through the very, as you can see through the various awards and nominations that you talked about at the top of the show, um, but it's also something that just I think speaks to the times we live in, from whatever angle you look at it, whether you're looking at a superhero story, whether you're looking at it as a story that increases representation, whether it's a story that speaks to the times we live in today. I think anyone who picks up the book and gives it a try will really find something special in it.
No, definitely. It's an amazing story, and it's really well put together. Can you sort of maybe touch on how it's been like the experience that I guess you guys get when somebody picks up the book at a convention for the first time?
Yeah, of course. I mean, honestly, I think for Barbara and I would say for Jordan as well, because he's expressed this to me. I think that is one of the biggest positives of a story like Ripple Effects. We have been able to have that experience where we're at a show and someone's perusing our books and they realize that this book is a superhero story that sure is talking about the origin of superhero, but also has a character that is a type 1 diabetic or has an invisible illness. And they stop and they go, hey, I'm a type 1 diabetic, or my mom is, or my dad is, or my friend has an invisible illness and has to deal with this. And I never see it represented in pop culture anywhere, you know? And I think that's exactly what we're going for. I'm the story obviously, has to be a captivating story. There are elements to Ripple Effects that are instinctually about like, the general excitement of like, how is he going to overcome the supervillains he's up against? How is he going to connect with the superhero team that he's involved with? How is he going to balance uh, you know his secret life and his personal life? um, but what really makes it stand out are those moments that people feel seen, when they find a book and they're like, oh, this connects with me on a deeper level, and it's something that either I was seeking out and have never seen, or that I didn't know would impact me, that I was looking for without knowing. Those are some of the I guess the best payoffs of putting out stories like this, because when a book like that connects with the reader, I think it goes right back to that thing that we're talking about with storytelling. I think the reason that we all get around the metaphorical campfire, of course, is to be excited and to be um, thrilled and entertained. But I think we all feel more fulfilled, when there's a substance to that story, when there's something that we can take away and put in context within our own life, and feel like it relates to something that we've experienced. And that's really what we see when this book connects with a reader.
Hmm. And I guess we'll sort of take a break and do a thunder round, which is our round of random questions. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's
All
do it.
right. Cool. If you could have dinner with anyone from the present day or the past, who would it be with, and where would you eat?
Wow, present day or the past? Um, Right now, I haven't thought it well through, but I'm a huge Star Wars fan,
Hmm.
and I lived in Pittsburgh, as did this gentleman. Um, I would love to have a dinner with Dave Filoni. I'm a big Dave Filoni fan. I love what he's
Nice.
doing with Star Wars, and I just think that would be a fun dinner. I feel like sometimes when you meet your heroes, it's you're like, oh, I don't want to go too far into the fan questions, but I feel like Dave would really be up for that kind of conversation.
Hmm. And I guess would you eat in Pittsburgh?
Yeah, you know what? Might as well go to a restaurant called Permani's. Permani Brothers.
Hmm.
It's horrible for you, but it's pure Pittsburgh food. Basically, what they take is they have a number of different sandwiches you can order. Every single sandwich gets coleslaw and French fries on top of the sandwich before they put the top of the bread. So it drips through your hands, but it tastes delicious, and you have a lot of heartburn later. You can wash it down with a Yingling, which is a beloved beer there in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, Rebels is one of my favorite iterations of Star Wars, and
Sure.
I think without Dave Filoni, I don't think there would have been a Rebels.
Oh no, not at all. He did a fantastic job with that one.
Hmm. What is one movie you loved as a teen, and one movie that you love now as an adult?
Okay, one movie that I loved as a teen. You know what? I loved Alien 3 as a teen. I'm a big Alien, as I mentioned, I'm a big Alien fan. That one, most people dislike that one. I absolutely love it. It's a masterpiece. I still love it. But I would say that a movie that I love as an adult would be, oh boy, what is one that I just love as an adult? Um, I might just have to say Alien 3 again. I'm one of those people. I Not that I don't love a ton of other movies, but I'm one of
Yeah.
those people that really likes revisiting movies and stories in general. I love rereading a comic. I love rereading a book. I love picking up stuff that I didn't catch before, or what I find in this part of my life, sitting with it differently because of how I've aged or my life experiences. It's
Hmm.
always fascinating to see like what you connect with or what stands out to you because you're at a different stage in your life.
Yeah, definitely. That's. I think I should probably do the same thing and see what I find out about myself, or what I think about whatever movie I'm watching.
Sure. Yeah.
um, if you were a Green Lantern, what would be the first thing you would create with your ring?
What would be the first thing I'd create? Wow. I would create I would create a library. I think libraries need some support in our world right now. So I would create a library of comic books, a
Nice.
comic specific library created by Green Lantern. All right, this is just becoming fantastic. Now I'm going to get DC to sponsor it. No, but I think that would be awesome. I guess in theory, if you were a powerful enough Green Lantern, you could not only create the library, but you could create the contents of the library, right?
Hmm.
Would that be the
Yeah.
case? And so
Yeah.
maybe we could create a library of comics where every comic known to humans is included. Maybe even outside, since we're Green Lantern, all comics of the universe, an internet, what would be a universal or intergalactic
Yeah.
comic library.
That'd be interesting. Um, you mentioned creatures with sharp teeth earlier.
Yes,
What is your favorite dinosaur?
I think it's T Rex. I think
Yeah.
I'm a classic.
Yeah.
You know what I'll tell you. I witnessed as a child, as many of us did, uh, King Kong defeating Tyrannosaurus, breaking his jaw in the classic film,
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
and I cried because he killed my hero.
Oh wow,
So,
man.
yeah,
Right.
rest in peace.
If Jack Kirby was still alive, what would you ask him?
I would ask Jack how. I mean, I think I know the answer, but I would want to know how to deal with the rising tide of fascism today. I think Jack
Mm,
had some key words on that. And we probably can guess what he would have said, but I think that we live in a really challenging time where you don't want to label people and you don't want to overestimate or panic, but at the same time, you don't want to be inactive. You don't want, you don't want to stand on the sidelines. And I think Jack never seemed, from what I've read, never seemed afraid to stand up for what he believed in. So I think he'd be a good person to ask about that.
Definitely. Um, when was your first San Diego Comic Con, and what do you remember from it?
Well, my first one, I believe, was 2008.
Hmm.
And I was going there with a motive of promoting that first comic that I was working on, and I volunteered. So it was an interesting one because I would spend half my day essentially standing in front of a door and saying like, don't walk in here," and then I, go off and attempt to have fun at Comic Con, which was, I don't know, it was a life changing experience for me. I had always seen pictures of Comic Cons in like things like Wizard magazine, but it never really grasped exactly what a Comic Con was. And San Diego, as you know, you go on that floor and it's mind blowing the first time. You're just like, what is this? What are you doing? There's things that go up to the ceiling, and if you're into everything, if you're a Star Wars fan and a comic fan and a gaming fan, if you have a little bit of like a foot in each world, it really is like you just feel like, oh, I'm at Mecca. This is it. I'm here with my people. I'm where I'm supposed to be. I want to see everything, and I just felt that. I think it was just part of that entire um, groundswell for me, personal groundswell that I was talking about earlier in the show, where it just felt like I found something I really wanted to be a part of, and somewhere I fit.
Speaking of SDCC, what was it like spending your honeymoon there?
It was fantastic. It was what was great about that was that that my wife was the one that suggested that we spend our honeymoon at San Diego Comic Con. So it was not something that I twisted her arm into or anything. She was like, "Let's do this," and then it was fantastic for. Well, I guess there's two reasons I can share. We up until that point, and still sometimes, you know, more recently, we share rooms as many people do with various parties. Because you go with a crew, and a lot of people split rooms because rooms are incredibly expensive in San Diego, hotel rooms. Um, and so we were used to like finding the cheapest hotel room and staying with like six other people. And so for our honeymoon, we were able to, rent a nice room and spend we had a kitchenette, and we were able to spend some time there and just enjoy ourselves, and it was more of a vacation than some of the previous years had been. And one thing that we lucked out on is that, I mean, quite appropriate for this show, that was the only year that I ever made it into Hall H. We met a couple who was also going to Comic Con at dinner at the hotel, and they were like, "Oh yeah, we're waiting for Saturday Hall H. If you guys want to come with us, you can." And so, I feel bad saying it, but we just walked up on Saturday and got in line with this couple and walked in, and we saw the announcement of Thor and that trailer. It was Cowboys and Aliens. I saw the Green Lantern, the WB or Warner Brothers Green Lantern movie with Ryan Reynolds
Hmm.
announcement, and he did, the Green Lantern oath with a little kid. There were so many iconic moments that happened essentially in that experience, and usually now I'm at the table or doing stuff that's more comic book related, because we have our own responsibilities to the titles that we're representing there. But that was a really fun experience to really to have that experience once before getting into the more professional side of the convention.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting experience. You know, going to San Diego Comic Con and assuming different roles. Like
Hmm.
I've never been a volunteer, but I have worked a booth, and obviously doing press and doing interviews, and
Right.
then just being a regular fan. It's definitely a rush either way. You know.
It's all different, but it's all the same.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. If you were president of the United States, what kind of artwork would you hang up in the Oval Office?
Oh man, what kind of artwork would I hang up in the Oval Office? You know what? I would probably hang up some Star Wars artwork. I'm looking
Mm,
around my place. I have a lot of I don't know why I tend to focus only on Star Wars, but I have a lot of Star Wars artwork. But you know what? I'm second guessing myself right now. One thing that I have experienced really in the last 5 years is the joy of purchasing original comic art. And there's
mm,
something about an original uh, comic page, hand inked. It pops on the wall. It's beautiful. It's unique, and it tells a story because naturally the sequential art is there to communicate something, even if the dialogue is not on the page. I bet you there are some just fantastic pages of comic book art that we could fill those walls with.
definitely. Um, you sometimes share your weekly comic pulls, let's say from the
Yes.
previous week, and it's at least 10 titles or so. I mean, do you have the ability to store things in a pocket universe? I mean, how are you able to still collect tons of floppies? And what determines what comics you decide to purchase?
I mainly go off of either my own interests or individuals that I want to support, whether that's creators I know or just creators that I am a fan of. Um, it's getting harder and harder to find storage. I will say that I love posting those pictures because I do it out of the idea of like, not like, hey, look what I bought, but more of the less capitalist aspect of like, hey, let's support the comic industry, let's support individuals that we believe in, and let's encourage this weekly trip to the comic book shop as something positive in order to support the retail or support the industry. I think there's a bunch of complexities that go in there about like how difficult the pre-order system is, and how comics sometimes hold themselves back. But ideally, I like going out there, letting people know I'm buying books, and hopefully encouraging them to do so as well. I do have these fantastic things called drawer boxes, which are these specific long boxes that you can build into like stackable drawers, and you can pull them out. But I'm already hitting capacity once again. I feel like it happens every couple of years, and you either have to go through and just like cut out all the comics that you're like I'm not going to hold on to these. I'm going to donate these, or I'm going to give them away to people. Or I might get to the point where I have to start putting stuff in the garage. I'm lucky enough to have a garage, so maybe that'll work. But
Yeah.
but but at the same time, you get I don't know if you find yourself in a similar space. You get into a debate. You get into a debate about like how much of this stuff should I hold on to, and how much, like, how healthy is that? Ideally, if I could have my way, I don't want to hoard things, because I feel like that's what a lot of us didn't have things when we were younger. You couldn't get everything you saw in a magazine or in the comic book shop, and so, or the action figure aisle, and so when you finally start having a regular income, and you kind of like buy up everything. You're like, I'm gonna own it now, and sometimes we overdo it, and what I would like to do is I would like to be the geeky version of the old man at the end of the Sandlot. I don't know if you've seen that movie, but essentially, we have this individual who is a huge part of the baseball industry, or the baseball community, when he was a pro, and then
Hmm.
he has an injury and loses his sight. And when he invites these neighborhood kids from that play baseball in the backyard in to see his house, they're like, their minds are blown. They're like, oh, there's a picture with this guy, and there's a Babe Ruth
Hmm. Right.
signed baseball and all that. And he's just kind of like, it's just stuff. It's just stuff. Come here once a week and talk baseball with me, and you can have this stuff. I don't care, you know. And I think that's the key to aging as a geek. I think at some point you have to realize the joy of being a geek that is aging, you know, towards past middle age, is like you get to see other people start to come into the community. You get to be part of the welcoming community. You get to have conversation with that new generation. So I hope that is. I hope eventually I'm handing all my comic books out to kids just so that they come over and like chat aliens and Star Wars with me for the afternoon.
Well, hopefully you won't be blind.
Yes, yeah. Hopefully not. I would still like to be able to read the comics.
um, what would the title of your biography be?
um, Title of my biography. Let's say "Stories Matter."
Oh, there you go. I like it. Um, you've talked about a lot about Star Wars, and so I'm
Hmm.
going to ask you, what kind of character would you be in Star Wars?
You know, I would like to say I'd be like some rogue or bounty hunter or scoundrel. I think if I'm honest with myself, I would probably be a very dedicated and maybe awkward Jedi Knight.
I guess if you're a Jedi, you'd. I guess. Have you ever thought about what kind of ship you'd have, or would it be an X-wing?
Oh man. You know, I know that I have thought about this more than I probably should have, because when I was in my teens, I was big into like Star Wars, like tabletop role playing games.
Yeah.
Um, but the only one that I can really remember was I really had a thing for the ship from Dark Forces. You remember that video game, Star Wars Dark
No,
Forces? It was
I
one of
don't.
the
I
it
don't. I
was
don't remember that one.
it was one of the early ones in the '90s, and had a character named Kyle Katran, and
Mm.
he was sort of like the first, like, oh, there's another Jedi besides Luke out there.
Ah.
And he had this cool, I don't even remember what it was called. It was like the Claw or something like that. It was just a really cool, like, new looking ship. So I guess I'll settle for that one.
Do you have a name for your ship?
A name for my ship. I don't know that I do. I would come up with one, but I feel like I would want it to come from experience. You know, I would want
T-
to find
tell
its
you what.
name.
Tell you what. We'll have you on at another point in time, and I'll ask you the same question, and we'll see what you come
Excellent.
up
After
with.
I've flown with it for a while, sure.
There you go. Do you have any regrets, and if so, what are they?
Have any regrets? Yeah, you know what? I think everyone, if they're honest with themselves, has regrets. I don't believe that people live without regrets. I think people
Hmm.
just convince themselves that they live without regrets. I think that if I was to go back into my earlier years, there are probably times that I was selfish or careless or didn't have as much a focus on some of the things that now define my purpose, or the momentum when it comes to things like Fanbase Press or my own interests. And so I think those are the biggest regrets. I mean, there's other regrets, of course. I think everyone has things like, oh, I should have done this, or I should have done this, like, you know, creatively or career wise. And I certainly have those as well. But I think the regrets that I will hold close to me will be treating people carelessly. I think everyone has a little bit of that in their lives, and it's hard to make up for that stuff. You know, you have to come to terms with it within yourself and try to be a better person, and then you also have to decide on an individual basis, like, how do you approach it with any individual that you were careless with. You know, like, how
Hmm.
do you ask for forgiveness? Do you tell them you're sorry? Or is it better that you're not present in their lives? You know, so
Right.
I don't have any specific people that I will mention, but I think we all have incidents like that. You know,
Yes, definitely. Um, if I gave you $1 million, what would you do with it?
I would uh, I would probably quit my day job. I work a day job that I don't dislike, but I would really love to be able to focus on creative endeavors. I think there's a lot of us um, that would like to do that. You know, And so I think that would be probably what I would focus. But even then, I'm like, maybe $1 million wouldn't last that long. So maybe I would find a different use for it. But my mind goes to finding a way to focus more on comics and fan base press, and less on some of the other things that demand financial attention.
Mhm. What if I gave you $100?
If you gave me $100, I probably would. I'd probably do something nice for my daughters. I have twin daughters, and they love to hang out with me. And they right now the biggest thing in their world is let's go to the grocery store, let's go to Target, let's go to 7-Eleven. Any of these places is like mind blowing for them. It's their Comic Con. So
Wow.
I'd probably take them to somewhere, and just get them a few things that can make the day special for them.
Nice. Um, you're prepping a playlist for a very long road trip. What kind of music would be on there?
Hmm. I It would probably be an eclectic mix. I like Sting a lot. I like Lana Del Rey a lot. I don't know if anyone's heard of him, but I love Adam Warrock. He's a geek rapper, a nerdcore rapper, as they call them. He's just
Mm,
fantastic.
okay,
Um, yeah, I think those are. I mean, there are probably a few other mixes, but that could make up the majority of the playlist.
cool. And my last question for the Thunder Round is what's something new that you recently learned?
Something new that I recently learned. Um, that's interesting. You know what I learned actually just earlier today, and I haven't verified this, so I'm gonna go on faith.
Hmm.
I was recording a podcast about some very early '90s Jurassic Park comics that are on their
Mm,
30th anniversary, and someone mentioned that Alexander Payne wrote Jurassic Park 3. I don't know if that's true, but that is an interesting thing that I have not heard before.
huh.
I will have to verify that.
Well, I look forward to seeing what information you verify. Um, I guess we'll switch back and start closing out the show. Usually at the tail end of the show, I ask for some closing pieces of advice. As we've established, stories matter, and which is why I'm so thankful and happy that Fanbase Press has been around for a long time. What do you think has been the secret to your success, and what are some lessons that you have learned along the way?
Um, I think if I had to give one secret to our success, I would say that it probably comes from my co-founder Barbara, who's our editor in chief as well. And that's the recommendation that she shares this phrase from the saying from Fred Rogers often, and it's basically that the secret to success is three things: be kind, be kind, be kind.
Mm,
I think that kindness and making that a mantra has really been the secret to our success. I think that we have tried to genuinely just be kind individuals and provide a welcoming environment for comic creators and for fandom. And sometimes that comes off as cheesy to people. Sometimes they are skeptical about it. Um, but I think ultimately it's what a lot of us are looking for, because things can be so difficult, you know, in many ways. So I think being kind to others just leads to naturally to forming relationships, to networking, to helping one another, to forming lasting friendships within a certain community. So I would recommend to anyone, whatever you're doing, I don't think that there is anything to be lost from approaching things by being kind.
yeah, I mean, it's something that I've been a graphic designer for a while now, and it's
Hmm.
something that I sort of tell and when I'm mentoring other designers is, don't burn bridges because you never know
Oh yeah.
when you might need those connections, or especially when it comes to networking opportunities.
It's
So.
very true, and we as creative individuals, I don't want to speak for everyone, but it's very common that you need to have a little bit of an ego to be a creative individual. So sometimes that contradicts the idea of you know opening up or being vulnerable to people,
Mhm,
and I think that's important to remember, that that's an important part of being part of the community as well.
sure. Um, Now, where do you see Fanbase Press in the next 5 years?
Honestly, I hope that we can sail kind of the rough waters that are going on right now for everyone in both entertainment and in comic books. Budgets are getting tighter for everyone. We've seen some comic press sites disappear, some comic publishers disappear, people struggling to maintain their careers in the industry. We have AI as a new
Yeah.
threat. So ultimately, I think what I would like is just for Fanbase Press to continue to grow and sustain over the next 5 years. If we can flourish and expand, that would be great. I would love to be putting out more stories. We do have a few others that are in early development, that should um, see the light of day in the coming years. Um, but I think the most important thing for me is that we remain a platform where indie creators can feel like they can get some support and some promotion, and that we continue to be able to tell more stories. I mean, hopefully, in all honesty, hopefully the Kickstarter is very successful and this becomes a new outlet for us where we can engage with our audience, build even bigger projects, bring in even more incredible creators, and really find a new path to be forged forward on Kickstarter for Fanbase Press.
Hmm. And approximately when does the Kickstarter officially launch?
Well, right now we don't have an official date we're sharing. We're just telling people later this year. But what
Hmm.
I would encourage everyone is we have the pre-launch link up now, so you can go there. You can join by just adding your email, and you'll get an update as soon as the actual campaign goes live. And we'll have a bunch of other exciting announcements and promotion happening over the next couple months to help people get more aware of what we're going to be doing with the Kickstarter and why they want to be involved. We'll also both be at ALA, that convention at the end of this month, and San Diego Comic Con at the end of next month. And we'll be promoting the Kickstarter at both conventions. So come by. You can get some of the actual handouts that we have. Has the new cover image by Justin C. Harder, who's just a phenomenal talent. You'd know him from creating the credits on the film for Deadpool. If you remember the little animated guy at the end, the
Nice.
animated Deadpool. That's Justin. He did our covers for the initial trade paperback launch, and he's done a phenomenal new cover for the hardcover. But yeah, stop by if you're going to be at those conventions, or most importantly, go to the pre-launch page, put in your email, and then you won't have to worry about it. You'll get a notification as soon as we're ready to launch.
Yeah. I'll definitely add a link to that page on our blog post. And yeah, I mean, I don't think beginning and end title credits in movies get enough credit. So
True. Yeah.
yeah, I
Especially
mean,
because I mean, with some of those Marvel movies, uh, maybe it depends on which ones you really prefer, but I feel like they did a really beautiful job of wanting to make the credit sequences
mhm,
interesting and beautiful, so that you would stay for the mid credit sequence, the
right.
post credit sequence, all of that.
Yeah, going back, and I've said this in past interviews when I was actually, I think, being interviewed. But
Hmm.
I've often said in the past that if it wasn't for West Side Story and the beginning and title credits that Saul Bass did, I probably wouldn't have thought of graphic design as a
Really?
as a job. Yeah,
Oh, that makes well. Those are beautiful credit sequences.
yeah,
But what an interesting inspiration. That's so cool.
yeah. And I guess that's a whole different uh, a longer conversation because you can probably go to like 7 and what that did for that medium. But I guess we can talk about that at a later time. Um, as far as superhero shoutouts go, is there a person or group of people that has helped you along the way that you'd like to say thank you to?
Oh, there's so many. I guess I would just really like to give a shout out for this show to the creative team of Ripple Effects. We've had such an amazing response to this book, and everyone has put absolute love into the work. So I will give a shout out to writer and creator and colorer Jordan Hart. We have illustrator Bruno Chirolo, uh, Shane Kadlecik, who was our flatter, letters by Oceano Ransford, and then of course cover art by Justin C. Harder. Um, and of course, I guess I would be remiss to not mention Foreword by Harvard librarian Matthew No. We're we're just overjoyed to have everyone put such love into the book, and then be joined, you know, by like individuals like, as I mentioned, Gail Simone and Liana Kangas, for the new hardcover, and others, of course. It's I guess it's a long way of saying we have a wealth of talent, for this book, and for a kid from like central PA who didn't even know a comic book shop was in his was in his town. um it is kind of mind-blowing, you don't think of it every day, but when you start thinking about like, hey, like, this is how far we've come, and these are the type of individuals that at least believe enough in Fanbase Press to be part of a project like this, and to believe that the mission of expanding this kind of superhero story and this kind of representation is worthwhile. um, that's we couldn't be luckier.
Hmm. That's awesome. Um, did we miss anything? Are there any other projects that you'd like to promote? What other projects have you been involved with that you'd like our audience to know about?
Well, mainly I'm just focusing on the Kickstarter right now. But if I guess what I will say is, if you have not checked out either Kinsei, which is our superhero book from Fanbase Press about a girl who gets superpowers during a quinceanera. That is a phenomenal book. I think people who like Miss Marvel or Buffy the Vampire Slayer would really get this kind of tone, and story, and it's just super super charming. And then we also have our latest release, Four Color Heroes, which is um, a love story between two teenage boys who connect over a comic book. Essentially, one of them is from a fundamentalist religious household. One of them is sort of kid from the wrong side of the tracks. They meet in detention, and one of the kids wants to share the comic with the boy from the fundamentalist home, but he's not allowed to read anything that's not approved reading. So they come up with a workaround where um, Oscar will not read the book himself, but Patrick will read the comic and then tell Oscar what happened in it. Thus, they both can share
Mm.
the story, and so it becomes a monthly ritual where they meet each month with a new issue of the comic, and connect through that, and kind of grow together as the world's trying to pull them apart. That actually won the GLAAD Media Award this year for best comic, and it's a truly fantastic story. It's by Richard Fairgray. um, can't say enough about it. If you are someone who loves comics or loves the power of storytelling, or even just thinks, representation is threatened, especially LGBTQA representation currently in this country, it's a story worth taking in, worth sharing with others. Um, yeah, those are the ones that I would mention.
Sweet. Well, hey, Bryant, thank you so much for coming on the show. Like I said in the beginning, it's been a long time coming, and yeah, we're fans of Fanbase Press, and we always try to, promote whatever you guys do. So, thank you for coming on the show, man.
I really appreciate it. I can't say thank you enough. And honestly, um, thank you to your listeners, and thank you to you, Aaron, because without individuals like yourself doing this and making space for creators, it would just be that much harder. So I think you're a really important part of the community, and I'm happy to come back anytime you want me.
Sweet, and I guess I'll see you at San Diego Comic Con.
Oh, for sure, absolutely.
Awesome. Looking forward to it. And thank you for listening to the Hall H Show podcast. Once again, thanks to our guest, Bryant Dillon, the co founder and president of Fanbase Press. Please make sure to sign up for the Kickstarter campaign launch notification for the deluxe hardcover version of Ripple Effects. As you know, we love putting the spotlight on independent pop culture creatives. If you have a suggestion for a potential guest, please let us know by reaching out to us on social media or by filling out our contact form on our website, hallh.com. If you believe in our mission to be the voice of independent creators, we would appreciate a rating, hopefully 5 stars, and a comment on Apple Podcasts. And please spread the word on social media using the hashtag HallHShow. Peace, cheers, and stay safe out there.